Okay, we're ready to do the next connection, and here is where I have a slight divergence of opinion with Steve, the circuit designer. Now, they've got a three-way join here in this one, which goes one from the motor, and then it comes down, and then it meets another one, which is going to go off here. So there's a second one over here that goes to the FET that we can ignore for now, and then there's a third wire that they supply you with that can splice into that one. To then go down to the last connection, which is the normally closed here on the relay. Now, I don't like that as a method in some respects because I think it provides a very messy join in here, and I don't like three-way joins. I don't think they're very tidy. So if you want to follow my method, you've got two choices. Either you make a big longer piece of blue wire, so you can get one single length of blue wire and run it to the normally closed, and then split it so that it then has another one coming off, and you can use one of these lengths then to run off to the FET like that, which gives you a nice neat, I think, method. And if you don't have a spare piece of blue wire, what you can do is you can make these two, splice them together to make one long length, and then stagger your joint. So don't put your third joint in the same place, put it a bit further down or a bit further up, however you can want to thread. So that will give you, again, still two splices in that piece of wire, but that makes you one long piece of wire of about 200 millimeters, which goes down in, and then you can split it. So I'm going to be neat, and I'm just going to get another piece of wire out my stock and make a long piece. But if you've only got the kit, just wire those two together, and then you can split them more easily. Okay, so here you can see how I solved that dilemma with the blue wire. And I've come down here, and I've just gone into the grip, and then there's a two-way split here. There's one wire here which is going to go to the MOSFET, and then the other wire just tucks under and goes onto the normally closed on the relay. If you're running the relay somewhere else, obviously you're going to need more wire to hide the relay somewhere else, or you'll have to go back through here and into this dead space back here. So your wiring might end up looking a little bit different, and I think that's where the guys probably intended the relay and the FET to go, because it's quite a big space. But like I say, I like doing it my way, and here's where it is in the grip. And you can see I've just put a little zip tie on here just to hold all this wiring together and bundle it nicely out the way, and then I'll probably do the same up under here somewhere to keep it all away from the trigger, and then that'll give us a nice neat loom in there. You can heat shrink wrap all of that, but for maintenance purposes in a tight space you're better off with the zip ties, because they still allow the silicon wire to flex, and it's easier to run them, unlike in a rapid strike where you've got straight runs. There's a lot more curves in the Stampede. So that is the relay complete, and I'm just going to go quickly back over those. So you have the coil connections down here, and one of those goes straight to your connection here, and then the other coil connector uses your original connection and goes to the normally open switch up here, which you can see there. And then you've got the normally closed, which goes into the two-way split, carries on up here and goes to the blue wire on the motor. Then you've got the common, which comes through here and then goes to the red wire on the motor, and that leaves the normally open, which is connected direct to the main battery feed. So hopefully that's right. If it's not, I'll have to do that bit again later. Okay, before we finish working on the relay and the power and switch to the FET, we've got to put in the JST connector, which jumps across the shell halves, and this allows you to retain that stock power on-off switch on the other side. So your red line here is going to go into the main battery wire. You can put it anywhere along the length of the JST, but I'm just going to go in here because it's more convenient. So I'm just going to make my splice in there. That's probably not as neat as it could have been if I'd been thinking ahead, but I completely forgot about that. It's a good reason to not solder your power connector till the very end, because it allows you to slide down, and if you need to take anything off that you forget about, you can. So there's a little mistake for you all. Nearly forgot the JST connector. Okay, we're going to start wiring the MOSFET in a minute. Now, I want to clarify, for those of you who are looking at the BSUK circuit diagram and trying to work out what the hell's going on, just like me, if you look at the BSUK circuit diagram and it's facing towards you with the key at the bottom, you will see that the FET symbol's marked with FET, and then it has a couple of green symbols for the connections, and it doesn't tell you what they are, so I'm going to go through them. If you look at the left hand side of the diagram, there's one connection on that side which is going round to the power switch, and that is the gate. And then you've got the top one, on there, which is the drain, so there, and then the bottom one is the source. So as you look at the circuit diagram, left hand one is the gate, top one is the drain, bottom one is the source, and that's with, and then as you look at the FET, if the heatsink is facing down, they're numbered this way: gate, drain, source. So that should make life a little bit easier when you come to wire the FET, and I'm going to do that next. Okay, so I've done a quick connection to the FET now, and I've done this center pin on the FET, which is the drain, and that's attached to the blue wire there from the motors that we split off earlier on, the other one of which went to the normally closed. Now, quick discussion about resistors and the LED. In the pack today I got a resistor and an LED arming light, and those would normally go in the other shell half, the arming light. And I'm in a hurry this time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in, which is a 10k resistor, and if you use a 10k resistor you don't need the LED. You can just put the LED inside here, and you can have it in this shell half if you want, which is fine if you're left-handed or you don't mind your opponent seeing the arming light, but personally I like to see the arming light on my side of the blaster, so I'm going to just use a 10k resistor. Now that means that I won't have to put in a second jumper plug across to the other shell half as well, so I'm saving a bit of space. So if you want to do that, you will need some 10k resistors. That's 10,000 ohms, and the banding on those, if you look at this one, it's brown, black, orange, gold, or if the other way it's gold, orange, brown, sorry, gold, orange, black, brown, and that tells you it's 10,000 ohm resistor, and if you put that in across there you won't need to use the LED. If you want to use the LED, if you look at my old guide to the Stampede for the Mark 1 kit, that shows you how I put the LED in, and it's no different. The FET wiring is almost identical on this. All we've done is put a relay in to allow this switch to stay the same, so the FET won't change. So if you want that LED for arming purposes, you can either put it in this shell half, in which case you don't need to have a jump cable, or you can have a second jump connection, and then you can put the LED in the other half. I went off and finished the FET off because my camera ran out of battery. So we just quickly run over the connections in the FET. So obviously remember, this is your jumper, it's going to go across to your stock power switch. And so on the FET we have pin number 1, which is the gate. That goes to the negative wire here on the JST connector, and then you'll see that here's the 10k resistor, and if you're going to use the separate LED and resistor, then this would be where your first wire comes off to go to your second connector. And then here we have the middle pin, which is the drain, and the drain again goes from that blue wire, look, and that blue wire goes up to that three-way split, then goes up into the motor, and the other one goes to the normally closed on the micro switch. And then over here we've got the source, and you can see the source goes to this long wire which I put in, which is the negative battery, and that's the long black wire in your kit. It's the longest wire in the kit, and then that also has a little splice here where the 10k resistor comes back in. And then further on that black wire, the other connection I've put in is I've put a little splice in here, and I reused that piece of brown wire, and that goes to the common here on the cycle control switch. So that's the other 3 connections made. This leaves you with only the battery leads left, and obviously we're going to have to put in the inline fuse. So I'm going to do those next, and then that hopefully should be the wiring loom complete, and then we can test fire and make sure that it all works. Okay, so there's those last connections, and you can see that I've put the inline fuse holder, and then the fuse just goes underneath here inside. So just put a fuse in, and they just slot in like that inside the fuse holder, and then you want to make sure that that sticks out the end, because otherwise you can't get to it. If it's inside the battery tray you won't be able to reach it. So if anything does, heaven forbid, go wrong, obviously now your motor's protected, and the 10 amp fuse will pop. That's usually caused by a cycle fault, so if your fuse pops you can just replace it and keep going because it'll still be protected. So there you go, and then I've just soldered the battery connector on. Obviously remember to check the polarities on the battery connector, because you don't want to wire it round backwards, and if you do have any problems, it's always worth remembering your motor polarity connections. The thing that I found that I got wrong the first time I did this job was I got the normally closed and normally open on the relay round backwards, and that puts the motor into reverse, which you don't want to do if you can avoid it. So I always test this on an alkaline test pack, which doesn't actually have the power to fully compress the spring, and that means that if it's in reverse, obviously this just doesn't move, which is good news. So we're going to get ready to test. The last thing I've got to do is I've got to make up, I've kept the 2 wires from the other shell half, hang on. So I've kept the other 2 wires from the other shell half in the grip, and then you've just got to join those together to the so that it's nice and neat. I'll probably take a little bit off. So I'm going to do that in a second, and then that'll be everything ready, and that'll allow your arming switch to still work up here for on and off.